Hi, my name is Michael, and I wanted to share with you the grand tale of my success, although it took a lot of hard work and effort to get here. As things started off very rocky for me, my parents were very young, and they couldn't care for me, and so they gave me up for adoption. They felt that I would have a much better chance at life if they did so, even though it was the hardest thing that they ever had to do. It didn't take long for me to be adopted by a family in another city. My new parents were fairly wealthy, and already had two daughters named Gloria and Emily, but had always wanted a son, and so they chose me. Growing up, they were always far stricter on me than on my sisters. If I broke something, then they would spank or hit me. Whereas my sisters would only be talked to, or at the very worst, they would be given a timeout. As I grew up, I learned to try to avoid getting in trouble and focus on doing my best in school. I didn't want to give my adoptive parents any reasons to yell at or discipline me. However, they always found reasons to do so anyways. They would always just treat me like a burden while treating my sisters like saints. When I got old enough, they started having me clean the house. It was simple things at first, such as dusting and sweeping, but eventually I was cleaning the entire house. On top of the cleaning, one day my adoptive mother said,
"Michael, you have come of age. It's time for me to teach you how to cook. You lazy around a lot. You know I'm getting old, so I need you to assist me."
"You right, honey. Men should know how to cook." So she taught me how to cook and bake, and before long I was making everyone the family meals. I would have to wake up an hour early before anyone else and get breakfast and lunches ready for everyone. And then as soon as I got home from school, I needed to start getting dinner ready. It barely left me enough time for anything else, but I did manage to find time to study. Sadly, schoolwork was my only escape. Even on the weekends, my parents made sure that my days were filled with tidying up. From the moment I would wake up until the moment I would go to sleep. My parents would make me work while my sisters sat around and did nothing. For our birthdays, they would get video games or toys, and I would get mops and brooms. I knew that it was unfair that I was the only child doing chores, and that it wasn't normal for our parents to treat me the way that they did. But I had no choice but to do as they ordered me to do. It didn't help that my sisters were beginning to take lessons from our parents and force me to clean up after them.
"Michael, you filthy pig. Clean my bathroom. Do it now, you lazy jerk. And after you clean hers, then you can clean mine and also clean my room too."
"But I have to study for an exam. Can't you two do it yourselves?"
"You can do that after you've done as we told you to do. Now get to it."
Although I was annoyed, I did as I was told, because I knew what would happen if I didn't. I was constantly tired as I could barely find enough time to sleep, since I was doing all of the chores, the cooking, the cleaning, and at the same time trying to find time to study. I began to hate my family for making me their own personal slave, and all because I was adopted. The older I got, the more they put on my plate. I always had bags under my eyes, while my sisters grew fat and lazier as the years dragged on. Even so, I managed to keep my grades high, and I did very well in school. It didn't hurt that I had no social life whatsoever, while my sisters constantly went out to parties and were barely passing their classes. Finally, when I was going to graduate from high school, I applied to every scholarship program that I could, and prayed that one of them would come to my rescue. To my surprise, my prayers were answered, and not only did I get one, but I was granted a full scholarship. I knew that I had found a way out, and I wrote a note saying that I was leaving, and left it on the kitchen table. Then I quickly packed up my bags, and as quietly as I could, I left the only home I had ever truly known. Before I left town to head to university, I stopped off at the police station and told them my situation. If I hadn't, then I had no doubt that my parents would try to claim that I ran away from home, or that I was kidnapped, and try to force me to return home. But by going to the police and notifying them that I was an adult and that I was leaving home on my own volition, then they couldn't contact the police and use them to force me to return home. And so, I went off to university and I never looked back. Between going to school and picking up a part-time job, I found that I actually had more free time than I ever had before. For the first time, I was actually able to have a social life, and it felt amazing. My time in university was such a breath of fresh air and was incredibly freeing. For the first time in my life, I was able to have friends and begin to date as well. In fact, in my third year of university, I met Angela, and the two of us became inseparable. It was a bit awkward, though, to explain to Angela what my family situation was, but she was quite understanding. After I graduated, I was able to find an entry-level position at an architectural firm. Thankfully, the company I worked for made a point of teaching me everything they knew, and it wasn't long before I became a partner. Shortly afterwards, Angela and I got married and bought a house in the same city that I grew up in. Our home was easily twice the size of the one that I grew up in, and since we both worked long hours, we knew that we would need to hire some staff to help maintain it. Between the two of us, though, we made more than enough money to cover everything. Soon after we moved in, I received a call from my sisters. Somehow, they had tracked me down and they wanted to meet with me. Reluctantly, I decided that enough time had passed, and although I would never be able to forgive them for what they had done, I was at the very least curious what had become of them. And so returned to my childhood home and was surprised to see a large for sale sign on the front lawn. Inside, my two sisters were arguing and hadn't even noticed that I had entered.
This is all your fault. If you hadn't spent all of the money before Mom and Dad had passed away, then we wouldn't be forced to sell the house to pay for our debt.
Me? I didn't spend the money. You did when you kept buying all that fancy designer clothes.
And what about all your vacations? Honestly, we'll be lucky if we don't end up living on the street.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My adoptive parents had treated me like trash and had treated these two as queens. And now that they were gone, the two of them were falling apart at the seams. Well, the two of you could always move in with me. I could tell that I was the last person that they expected to see, and the look of shock was priceless.
Michael? Where did you come from?
Wait, are you serious?
Yes, of course, after I left home, my life got infinitely better. Although I'm not offering you a free ride, I'm offering you jobs. If you, the two of you, want to work as maids, then you can live with my family, but that's the best that I can offer you.
Maids? Are you insane? I would rather live on the street than be a maid for a loser like you.
And with that, Gloria stormed out of the room, but Emily stayed. I could tell that she didn't want to accept my offer, but she truly didn't have any other choice. And so reluctantly, she came home with me and started working for my wife and I. A few weeks later, though, Emily showed up on my doorstep and apologized and begged me to take her in as well. A few weeks living on the street had shown her that she had no other choice, and so the two of them became our maids. Unlike them, and my parents though, I did treat them well and made sure that they lived comfortably. It was rather poetic, really, that I was forced to be their servant for so many years, and now they would spend the rest of their lives serving me and my family. My only regret is that my parents didn't live to see how much they had messed up my sisters, or how I showed them compassion when they had never shown me any. Thanks for watching.